It is 10:29 and it has all been approved. Thank you, guys.
We still have public session of the meeting.
Public session of the meeting?
At least it's on the agenda. I've got some things I need to present.
Do you know anything about that, Jennifer? Did you have public session on the meeting?
It's on the agenda.
I guess I just printed up the agenda and just put on there that they were signing checks. I didn't think about taking anything.
Because I don't know anything about that, so I'm not really in charge of running a meeting, so.
I'll be brief. The law outlines we're required to have a public session, but there's some things that I need to go over. Who's your current treasurer? Is that you?
George Kyle.
Is he a board member?
No,
Okay.
he is the treasurer.
Okay. At the last meeting, and I'll give you guys copies of exactly what I'm referencing. There's a copy for you, sir. One for you, and there's one for all the other board members. At the very top, the last meeting, the discussion was bonds that were being referenced. The district is looking at buying bonds.
Okay.
I want to emphasize what the law says
Thank you.
because what was presented the other night was completely illegal for this district to do. Under no circumstance shall any bonds issued or any other obligations incurred under this act by a district be or become an indebtedness or an obligation of the district payable from taxes. Part of the bond proposals the other night was bonds that would tie the taxpayers to that debt if this board couldn't make those payments. District bonding issues are completely separate from municipal bonding issues, and it's forbidden by law. You cannot enter into those bonds, and that very statement has to be on the face of any bonds that are sold. Point and reference for your next meeting in that regard. The next one, disregard. I was under the impression the treasurer was one of your board members. The third paragraph there, no money shall be paid out of the treasury of the district except upon order signed by the chairman. I understand your chairman's gone, but the statute forbids any payments to go out without the chairman's orders. His order is the signatures. The last one, Board of Trustees may, in its discretion from time to time by resolution passed by a majority of the vote, they may appoint an attorney, one or more engineers, and such other officers as the board determines necessary. The board shall, in and by such resolution, fix the term of office, the compensation, and the prescribed duties to be performed by such officers. I'm referencing Francis and Associates. There is not a resolution from time to time appointing them. There is not a fixed compensation. They've been on an ongoing perpetual contract. And there's some other issues I'll be bringing forward at the next board meeting in regard to that, because there's a massive amount of inappropriate billing going on. And we have some information that I think the board's going to want to hear. The last thing I have to present, Jennifer, are you the secretary?
Yes.
This is a copy for you. That is the official documents pertaining to ballot measure. The Board of Trustees of the district may be elected with the presentation of at least 100 signatures. These are copies for the entire board of those signatures. One for those that are present. Here's a stack for the rest. They've all been certified by the county clerk's office. The only thing, Jennifer, from your standpoint, that just has to go from you as the secretary to the clerk's office to be certified.
In both counties, or?
I believe so, since it's a multi-district. Neither clerk could tell me one way or the other, but I would assume it is just it has to go to both to be certified. The copies we presented were certified copies.
One moment, please. It's another wrapper, Jennifer. Oh, jeez. I can't get it open either. Can't get it open either. Just got it started. There we go. You may continue.
Thank you. I'll just read this real quick for the record. It's the statute pertaining to the water district and trustees. Public water district organized under this act may determine, as provided in this section, to have an elected rather than appointed board of trustees. Upon presentation to the board of trustees of a petition signed by not fewer than 100 of the electors of the district requesting that a proposition for the election of trustees be submitted to the electors of the district, the secretary of the board of trustees shall certify the proposition to the appropriate election authorities. The appropriate election authorities is the clerk. And that's all that you would have to do in that. We've presented those signatures. There's over 100 signatures there. The copies that I provided were certified. You have the original, which the copies were made from. Anybody have any questions for me?
If I may note, you were talking about Francis's and the original agreement. And I'm not sure about all this because this is just kind of thrown at me. I'm just now coming back in
No
to
problem.
work. And Tom's not here. But we do have, for every phase that we do have with Francis's, we do have a signed agreement per phase that is
Yes,
entered.
yes,
So,
ma'am.
okay.
What we don't have is a resolution by the board.
Okay.
And what the whole focus of this, when you look at the last 10, 20 years, you are allowed by law to hire an engineer. This district is spending 3 to 4 times on an engineer what they need to, because you could hire one full-time and have on staff for a whole lot less than what we're doing. A whole lot less. But the resolution has to come from the board. The board has to fix that compensation, not just sign the contract that's handed to them. And from day one, what they did was hand the contract over, and that's been basically the same contract throughout. The invoices that I've got, some of the things that we're seeing on, I've got a blank invoice that was paid. There's nothing on it. Yes, ma'am. And I understand there's a lot of bills that come in. I'm sure there's some more Francis and Associates bills here, but there's bills on there.
May I ask you to let me know what invoice number that is?
I will. I will.
And that way I want to check into that too because I'm not
Not a
sure
problem.
about that.
No problem. I'll email you back with a copy of which one it was.
I appreciate
But there's
that.
things that are there that we get so used to a routine of doing things, we could hire an engineer full-time for a third of what we're paying right now. And that's one of the things that
How do you figure we? Where do you figure we at?
the district's hiring one now. That you folks, the water district hires an engineer right now. You're doing it through contract with Francis and Associates.
That's right.
But the way it's being done, you could have your own full-time staff engineer for a whole lot less than what's being paid out right now under their contract.
What I'd like to know is what brought this all on in the beginning? Why are you here? Why is this all coming about now?
Members of the public have asked us to get involved.
Like who?
Hundreds
I
of
want a
people.
list of them.
I don't have to give you a list of those, sir. When people come to us on behalf of the watchdogs, they come to us mostly from an anonymous standpoint because they don't want repercussions. And we're not required to provide a list of who asked us to do this.
Well, you're asking us for all kinds of stuff. Why can't we
Yes.
ask you for all kinds of stuff?
Because the laws permit that. Under the Freedom of Information laws, we're permitted to ask questions of our public bodies and get that information.
But I don't see if you can't give us the information, why should we have to give you information?
Well, that would be something to take up with your state legislator, because the laws require that public information be public information. If there's something that I can answer for you, I'll be more than happy to, but as far as giving you a list of who's asked me to look into some
Just
things,
ask you a question, you won't do it.
and I'm referring to if there's something that I can release freely, then I will, but when people ask us to do that from a journalist standpoint, I'm not required, and actually I'm forbidden to do that in some cases.
Okay, you were asking me the other day about the bank statements back in 1989 that are stated Clark County Rural Water.
Right.
And I told you that the courthouse does not have anything prior to March of 1990.
Okay.
And I sent you an email on that, explaining that. I told you I would talk to you when Tom Jones got
Yeah.
back. Phil Adams was also originally on the board, was in it from the beginning.
Yes.
I talked to him about that this morning. He said at that time it was all private. It did not become public until March of '90 with the order going and incorporating Clark-Edgar.
Correct.
And everything went into Clark-Edgar at that point.
One of the things that we would like to know is the acquisition process of how that was acquired. Because it all got dumped into one, but we're not sure how that all happened.
I would have no idea. I mean, like I say,
I
I've checked with
understand.
the courthouse too, and they have no idea either because that has been so long ago.
I understand completely.
Can you make a note of that, Jennifer, and we can check on it? That a lot, our people have died off. Our attorney is gone and passed on, and the original one. And
Are you folks aware that Bob Colvin is not an engineer?
Bob does not sign our engineer agreements.
I have signatures of Bob Colvin as engineer on agreements.
Because I know when I started working here 10 years ago, everything back then was signed and approved by Tracy Grundon, who was the engineer at the time, and now it's Duncan McGibbon. Those are the engineers that sign off. Let's see, what does this say?
Well, the contracts that I have so far do reflect between Francis and Associates and this board that he signed off as engineer for Francis and Associates. And he is not an engineer.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that, because like I say, most of our documentation going to the state and that all of the paperwork that I'm aware of that gets filed with the state as far as permits and making sure we're in,
Right.
like I said, the time I've been here has always been either Tracy's or, for the most part, has been Tracy's that I've seen or Duncan's. And Duncan came in
Yeah, and
after.
I think it was, you had emailed me that Duncan was the
Was the
actual
current one,
engineer.
and prior to him was Tracy Grundon. And I know the paperwork I have seen.
And there's no issue with that, that there's definitely an issue with Bob signing his name as engineer. He
Okay.
holds himself out as engineer on behalf of the district. He did this at the last meeting, claimed to be the engineer for the district, and we called him out on it. He is not the engineer, and he is out in the public professing that he is the engineer for the water district. And those are some of the things we're getting reported to us, and that's why we're looking into some stuff.
Because I know the information we give him, he takes back to Duncan. Duncan prepares the information, gives it to Duncan or to Bob, and Bob brings us the information. He's acting as a representative for what Duncan is telling him.
Right.
And normally, if Jennifer or I have questions on behalf of the board, we contact Duncan, is who we talk to.
No problem.
But we'll let the board know that also.
Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Okay. Do you, Jim, or Phil have any questions? Any more questions for him, or?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And it is now 10:41. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all you have? Your meeting done? Is that all you have? Thank you.
Jennifer, I'll let you do your tape over here. I don't know how you mark them.